Have you ever stopped to ask, has anything like this ever happened before? Has any nation heard the voice of God speaking out of fire and survived? Has any people been rescued by mighty signs, wonders, and an outstretched arm? Today, we step into one of the most powerful declarations in all of Scripture, a moment where history, awe, and covenant collide. This is Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 32 to 40. The Book of Deuteronomy records the final sermons of Moses. 40 years have passed since Israel left Egypt. A generation has died in the wilderness. A new generation now stands on the edge of the promised land. Moses will not enter with them. Before they cross the Jordan, he speaks, not casually, but urgently. He reminds them of who God is, not a carved idol, not a silent statue, not a distant myth, but the living God who spoke from fire at Mount Sinai, who shook the mountain, who brought them out of Egypt with power that no nation had ever witnessed. This passage is a call to remember, and remembrance is the foundation of faithfulness. Now listen to the word of the Lord. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 32 to 40. For ask now concerning the days that are past, which were before you, since the day that God created man on the earth, and ask from one end of heaven to the other whether any great thing like this has happened, or anything like it has been heard. Did any people ever hear the voice of God speaking out of the midst of the fire, as you have heard, and live? Or did God ever try to go and take for himself a nation from the midst of another nation, by trials, by signs, by wonders, by war, by a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and by great terrors, according to all that the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? To you it was shown that you might know that the Lord himself is God. There is none other besides him. Out of heaven he let you hear his voice, that he might instruct you. On earth he showed you his great fire, and you heard his words out of the midst of the fire. And because he loved your fathers, therefore he chose their descendants after them, and he brought you out of Egypt with his presence, with his mighty power, driving out from before you nations greater and mightier than you, to bring you in, to give you their land as an inheritance, as it is this day. Therefore, know this day, and consider it in your heart, that the Lord himself is God, in heaven above and on the earth beneath. There is no other. You shall therefore keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you today, that it may go well with you, and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which the Lord your God is giving you for all time. Now let's reflect on this and let it sink in. This is not mythology. This is not poetic exaggeration. Moses appeals to history. Search the past. Search the nations. Search from one end of heaven to the other. Has anything like this ever happened? A people hearing the voice of the Creator from fire and living. A nation delivered from a superpower through signs, wonders, plagues, parted waters, and divine intervention. And why? Verse 35 gives the answer. So that you might know that the Lord himself is God. There is none other besides him. This is the heartbeat of the passage. There is no other, no rival, no equal, no second throne in heaven. The God who speaks is the God who acts. The God who delivers is the God who instructs. The God who loves is the God who commands. Notice something profound. Their obedience was not meant to earn redemption. Redemption had already happened. God rescued them first. Then he called them to faithfulness. Love came before law. Grace came before command. And obedience was the response of a redeemed people. Relevance for every believer. We may not stand at Sinai. We may not have walked through the Red Sea. but the question still echoes into our generation. Who is God? In a world filled with competing voices, philosophies, and shifting moral standards, this declaration remains unshaken. The Lord Himself is God. There is no other. Faith is not blind tradition. Biblical faith is rooted in God acting in history, revealing Himself, speaking, rescuing, guiding. And just as Israel was called to remember, we are called to remember. Remember what God has done. Remember how He has spoken. Remember how He has delivered. And just like Israel, knowledge demands response. Know this day and consider it in your heart. Faith is not only intellectual, it must move from the mind to the heart, from awareness to obedience. And the promise remains beautiful and practical, that it may go well with you. Obedience is not restriction, it is alignment. When we walk in the ways of the one who created heaven and earth, we walk in life. Search the past, search the nations, search the heavens. There is no God like the Lord. He speaks, He acts, He rescues, He loves, He commands, and He calls His people to remember. So today, know it in your mind, settle it in your heart, and walk in His ways. For the Lord Himself is God, in heaven above and on the earth beneath. There is no other.